I like it, I like it. How did everybody do during the storm?
Wonderful.
They survived?
Yeah, wonderful, all good.
You know, staying in the circle, I tell you, they kept saying 5 and 4 and 3 as it came towards us. I think we have so many light workers in this area that we just dissipated that storm. I mean, we were so blessed. And we just hold those people in Key West and Texas that have gone through it. We just hold them in the light right now and know that even in the midst of the storm, there's always a blessing. So, you know, when we can see it from that higher perspective, it changes everything. Well, if you have been missing Wednesday nights, you've been missing it. Because Miles is here on Wednesday night, and I tell you, it shifts your reality. He's really showing us how we create that reality and how we can change it. I mean, I just marvel at his wisdom and the way when his eyes go up like that, you know he's going to grab some pearl and bring it down to us. We're getting to know you, Miles. But it's just awesome. It's at 7:30 every Wednesday night. 7, excuse me, I'm so sorry. 7 o'clock every Wednesday night, and it's awesome. If you've missed it, you've really missed something because he's doing phenomenal.
He's like a giant clam.
How's that?
Oh, he's got all kinds of pearls.
I knew there had to be a punchline to that. I wasn't sure why.
Kevin's back. There he is, the one-liners.
Well, it's true. He does. He has all kinds of pearls. You know, hearing it from different people, I mean, it just spurs something in you. It's just phenomenal. Anyway, and we also, I know, Paul, you've changed the date of your event because of the storm. You want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, pardon me for eating here, but I had a tooth extracted the other day, so I'm stuck with eating soft foods.
Okay.
Yes, my event will be on the 23rd, next Saturday, this coming Saturday at this point. And the title is Change How You Think, Change Your Life. We'll actually go through a process where we'll see how your mind works and reveal the part of the mind that deals with disempowering thoughts. And we'll shut it down so that you literally can change your life.
Yes.
Come.
And that's what I say. Everybody, we're all really talking about the same thing. You know, I was watching last night. How many of you seen Out on a Limb about Shirley MacLaine's life story?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so amazing. And how, you know, it's so simple. It really is about saying that we are God and everything is inside of us, but really changing that. And we're the ones that are changing that. Well, we have the Dom and Her. We'll have more flyers. They're coming in October, and it's going to be an alchemy class. It'll be 3 different classes, and it's the alchemy class that they do at Dom and Her, which is really how we another way of. So now I just want to introduce Miles. I want to say, yes, Miles is such an awesome speaker, and he has studied the Seth material for over like 45 years, right? So what he does is really bring some of the things that are kind of complicated into simpler terms that we can really understand. Seth was a channeled material. Maybe Miles can say a little bit about that when he gets up, because some people have asked me, what is Seth? So maybe you can say a little bit about that, Miles. So anyway, without further ado, I just invite you to get your notebook out or your ears open so that you can hear Miles Block.
Thank you very much. So I decided to go a little far out on the limb today because this material is not easy, but then look at the crowd. It turns out that it's perfect for you. So what I'm going to be doing is talking about inner storms and outer storms, and specifically the way mass events are created. I thought it was appropriate considering what we've been through recently. And before I actually get into that, I want to create a context. So the first thing we need to keep in mind is who we are. And we're the sons and daughters of all that is. And we were part of all that is before there was existence itself. And before what we call the beginning. We classify this reality, this universe, as being about 14.5 billion years old. So in terms of physical reality, we're even older than that. So the question is, how many existences does that encompass? Literally, we have had countless existences. And why this reality? Why was this universe created? Because in the beginning, we were in all that is, an inseparable part of all that is. And all that is was going a little crazy hearing us. Because we were a thought of all that is, so we had existence, and then we had thoughts. And of course, that just continued to grow and grow and grow. And then one day, in a flash of inspiration, all that is realized how she could give us, and you'll bear with me because I like to start a new paradigm here of a loving all that is. So I refer to her as her. And in a flash of inspiration, she realized how she could create a reality where we could have a separate existence and yet still be within all that is. And this instant roughly equivalizes to what we would call the Big Bang in our reality. So we have an independent existence, and yet we remain in all that is. And to go even deeper, all that is, in her infinite wisdom, created a reality where we can grow into our all that isness, learn deep and profound emotional lessons, and yet not hurt either ourselves or anyone else, so that we can find ourselves, our all that isness, each of us, independently within our own reality. And this reality, at every instant, is an exact reflection of who we are to a level of minute detail that is simply inconceivable to us. So, up to now, we've had millions of existences, and since we are eternal, we have countless millions more on the horizon. And we are very advanced souls. Some of the most advanced souls in this reality. And naturally, we have chosen this advanced reality for our expression. And how advanced is it? How challenging is it? Well, this is the place in the universe with the widest range of emotion, the greatest depth of imagination, the greatest amount of free will, and complete separation from all that is at birth. That means we're dealing with three really wild horses: imagination, emotion, free will, while at the same time we've cut ourselves off from all that is to see if we can find our way back. And on top of that, we got together with our committee before we came into this reality, and we sweet-talked them into letting us put on our plate a ridiculous number of challenges. And in the end, it came down to us. We get to choose. They're not going to say no. They're just going to give us advice like, oh, you're kidding. You're going to add that and that and that. Don't you think that's a little bit much? Don't you want to tone it down a little? What about having a lifetime where you're just full of joy and float down the river?
That'd be good.
Now, we are very advanced souls, and yet, in the context that we're in a reality that seems completely real, and it's a complete illusion. So we may be a foot down the path, or 10 feet down the path, but the path is miles long. So no matter who's in this reality, no matter how advanced or enlightened they are, we all have our work cut out for us, disassembling the belief systems that hold this reality together, because it's built on official line of consciousness. And now, as we're experiencing more and more energy in our life, as the veils get thinner and thinner, ding, 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 the veils are actually gone. You're already experiencing your multidimensionality. You're having thoughts, feelings, you're having telepathic experiences, you're having dreams, you're having visions. That's who we are. We're way, way more than this old official line of consciousness can handle. So in short, to use a technical term, this reality is a real humdinger. Now, in terms of mass events, the reason I framed it this way is it's not uncommon that people die or suffer. But in the course of having millions of lives, sometimes we make a decision. Say I was a Jew in World War II, and I wanted to show the world the horror of bigotry. And I chose that particular life to make a statement, so I died in a concentration camp. And that's emblematic of what we all do when we find ourselves in challenges. We chose these challenges so we could be a symbol, and especially as advanced as you are in terms of your metaphysical growth and spirit. And on top of that, we've all chosen to come at a time of enormous energetic transition and transformation as we go from third density to fourth density. So that's where we are at the moment. Now, next, I want to discuss paradox. And the reason I'm discussing paradox is one of the most powerful tools we have for growth. And a paradox is simply when you have two things simultaneously in contradiction to each other. So as Albert Einstein would say, you're never going to solve that problem from inside one part or inside the other part. You're going to have to expand yourself in your mind to find a new platform in which you can embrace both of these because they're a contradiction. Now, in this case, we're talking about the fact that we live in our own separate reality, and yet the only way the illusion of this reality is maintained is through infinite levels of multidimensional cooperation. So we're in our own bubble, and yet there are infinite levels of cooperation required in order to sustain us here. So the first lesson of reality is cooperation. And we get together each night in our dreams where we're not bounded by time and space, where we can explore countless probabilities and agree on the construction of the reality that we're going to walk into the next day, the play we're going to step into the next day, in which we've given ourselves the central role. And further, during the day, we have millions of telepathic communications with each other each second in order to maintain the illusion of this reality. So it's a huge contradiction, isn't it? We're in our own bubble where we're alone. There is no overlap in our bubble with anybody else. Every single person that's here, every tree, every land, every leaf, every branch, every blade of grass is here because it loves you and has agreed to follow your script. And you're in each one of those realities. And we're each following the script of the other. So if I'm in Diane's script, and she's almost certainly in mine, and vice versa. Now, based on this, I've gotten to a place where I think I can talk about mass events. So, just like each of you in my reality, my bubble, helping me construct my reality each day that we agreed the night before in our dreams. Sorry, I already covered this. So, we're in this dance together, and the criteria for participating in another person's reality is simple. It's unconditionality and following the script. Now, the key here is, and the assessment is simple. The key is good feels good, bad feels bad. And the question is, said another way, are you happy? So as a group, when we feel bad, then this energy builds in our bubble. And it does not flow as the energy flows when it feels good. And the energy goes from our bubble to the energetic matrix that we call Mother Earth or Gaia. And at this point, the energy finds expression in mass events as earth events, for instance, storms, floods, tornadoes, earthquakes, so that the energy can be dissipated. So, if we go back in history a little and take a look at serfs that were tied to huge land holdings of nobility, in the Middle Ages they suffered dramatic plagues, huge plagues, that wiped out roughly 1/3 or more of the population. So what was that about, and why did it happen? And one of the things that it did was, forever after those plagues, serfs were able to move. Until that time, serfs were tied to the land. They were a part of the land. So it didn't matter who the nobility was, that serf stayed with the land. But after there were less people, the serfs found they could just get up, walk to the next town, and find another job, because they were needed, because there were less people. So what happens is the collective energy, the groaning of the people with the burden, rose to the heavens, so to speak, to the energetic matrix, and something like plagues was agreed on, so that people could be free. Now, every mass event, like an earthquake or a tsunami or a hurricane, wars, plagues, epidemics, is a reflection of where we are, both individually and as a society. So if you're in it for a reason. Now, every probable reality exists. So there's realities where what you're experiencing isn't happening at all, where there wasn't a hurricane, where there wasn't an earthquake. So if you're in the one where there is one, it's because it's reflecting the way you feel. It's reflecting your belief system. And where we are is a reflection of our spiritual evolution, our value fulfillment, or how much we're in alignment with all that is. And what is all that is? Love. In other words, how much do our actions reflect love in the world? Which also just so happens to reflect or tell us how much we personally are in alignment with all that is at the level of our soul. So now let's explore some other examples of mass events and see if we can determine how and why they were created. First, know this: every massive event, every massive expression of energy connects us with the massive energy we actually are in our essence, in our soul. So let's take Hurricane Irma. This was a huge expression of natural energy. We all know that nature is spiritual, and when we spend time in nature, we reconnect with ourselves, and it makes us feel alive. And we reconnect with the enormous energy of who we are as an expression of all that is. So the hurricane connects us with who we are at the deepest level, and frequently inspires us to reconnect with our spirituality in very powerful ways. As the expression, there are no atheists in foxholes. Second, this is a reflection of the enormous stress we all find ourselves experiencing as this energy rises in the transition. Our vibration rises, and in the old days, we could have probably gone on and lived our whole lives without dealing with the stuff inside of us. But not now. We don't have a prayer. And the things inside of us are now projected into our reality, into our life. And this stress creates enormous energy in our bubbles as we push against and resist what we don't want to see about ourselves. What things? Well, bigotry, racism, a belief in war and power over instead of power with, instead of recognition of acceptance and love, like Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Jesus. 3, when we have an event like this, we get to ask, how connected are we to each other in a personal sense? Meetup.com started at 9/11. People found new ways to connect with each other. And during the hurricane, how many times did somebody reach out to you, or did you reach out to them and connect with them? So it's a powerful event in a social sense as well. And how connected are we to our roots, to nature? Or how disconnected are we? Because when we experience the hurricane and the power's gone out, there's no phone, there's no TV, there's no computer, there's no internet. We are sitting in the middle of a vast amount of energy. And when there's not a hurricane, we can sort of live in a world of illusion, in a world of illusion. So this world is an illusion, but what about all the internet, all the phone, it's endless. So you'll notice all these events are saying the same thing. Wake up. Wake up to yourself and who you are. Now, Reba and I both noticed during the election of 2012, a huge storm gathered in the Atlantic, just off the middle Atlantic states, and actually stayed there for quite a long time before it barreled into the Carolinas. This was clearly not a reflection of the first lesson in life, cooperation, but instead of partisanship as reflected in our political parties. Parties not cooperating with each other with all our best interests at heart, not trying to understand the other person, the other side, much less expressing love. And of course, the media played on all this and played up to people's fears, making it even worse. Now, let's take the AIDS epidemic. People have been taught for ages that homosexuality is bad. But as the population grows, we have more and more people marginalized, ostracized, and feared. People actually feared to be around people that were homosexual, and then it was even worse if they thought they might potentially have AIDS. And of course, many of those people felt bad about themselves because other people felt bad about them and didn't hesitate to express their derogatory thoughts. So, is it any wonder that we were struck with a plague like AIDS that made how a person feels a huge point of focus in our society? And look at the changes that have happened since then. The changes have been enormous, all the way up to gay marriage being legal. So, gays in the military, gay rights, a realization that we all have deep questions and concerns about sexuality, and is it right or is it bad? And a greater acceptance of gay people in some cases, hopefully even embracing and honoring their lifestyle and their choices. And of course, that has taken us to a new leading edge, hasn't it? What about transgender and bisexuality? And even though in our small lifetimes, we don't have to deal with gender change, when a lifetime starts to get to be 200 years or 300 years or 2,000 or 3,000 years, when it gets into the thousands, you are literally going to change your sexuality multiple times in your life. You cannot sustain even 3 lifetimes coming back as a man or as a woman. It makes you too unbalanced, too dysfunctional. We need to see things from different perspectives. And that's why when you come and you come back, you frequently alternate your sexuality. And this is just showing up in our reality and giving us an opportunity to get prepared for what's in our future. Now, let's take a look at World War I, 1914 to 1918. The people, the kings, the monarchs, the rulers that took the world to war, they did not understand how it happened at the time. They took a world to war where 20 million people were killed, 10 million soldiers, 10 million civilians, another 20 million were wounded, and they didn't even have a clue about how they ended up in the war. The people that had constructed the what? Secret pacts had died. They didn't even understand what pacts and what agreements they were in. And people whose biggest hobby was to hunt game on their huge grounds were now confronted with making decisions they were clueless about. So what happened as a result of this war? Well, you can't trust kings and nobilities to run your life, and this effectively ended all the monarchies in Europe. Retribution is not a viable option at the end of a war. And in this case, what we did to Germany after World War I directly led to World War II. It so weakened, this war so weakened the world's spirit that the great flu epidemic started even before the war was over and killed another 20 to 50 million people. And infected roughly 1/3 of the world's population, 500 people total. And it was all so devastating that they had to start doing things differently in virtually every area of life around the world. So you can see a theme here. And the theme is, it's sort of wiping the slate clean for younger people and new ideas. And Thomas Jefferson was a big advocate of this. He would say, I know because my father would quote him, oh, every generation we should have a revolution. And I'm going, Dad, yeah, we got to get rid of the old people so the young people can come in. Well, ding, ding, ding. What's the biggest mass event of all? Death. We all die, don't we? And what are we doing? We're getting out of the way so that new ideas and new people can come in and take this reality forward. But ding, 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 ding. You never have to die. If you could keep up with your expansion, you don't have to die. You don't even have to get old.
That's right.
The question is, how willing are you to change? How much can you embrace change? How willing are you to get out on the leading edge and try something new? How willing are you to look at yourself? And about World War II, the blame game, Jews, Catholics, gypsies, homosexuals, it's simply, and it's not like, so those things were not a secret, but they were also not, well, in Germany they certainly built it into their laws, but in most places it was quiet. It was just pervasive though. So World War II exposed it all. And then in 1951 we had the Academy Award-winning movie, Gentleman's Agreement, that showed that maybe we weren't putting people in the gas chamber, but we had a pervasive culture in our own country of prejudice and bigotry against Jews. And of course we knew we had one against blacks. So these things, these mass events that happen, create a fertile ground for change. And one of the things that happens is, let's take World War II. There were a group of Frenchmen in World War II, before the end of the war, that envisioned the European Economic Community. And they made that a reality after the war. Now it took almost 20 years, but they took that vision and they took that emotional charge from what they suffered during the war and said, we need to do things differently. Let's form a community. And they took a large step forward. That's a good example for all of us. Now, all of these mass events shake us up and make way for the new. So, I have an exercise for you. Set some time each day, preferably in the morning, right after you get up. at around 3 o'clock or 4 or 5 or whatever it is. But whenever you get up, set aside some time and start with your life as a 1-year-old. In fact, if you know something about your mother and she's talked to you about when she was pregnant, start with your life when she was pregnant with you. And then start going through your life year by year and loving yourself. Now you're going to find there are parts of yourself, meaning, and they're going to come right to you because they're looking for recognition and acceptance. Where you see yourself, like me, banging pots and pans in a closet underneath the sink or something like that. Here's my poor mother pregnant, she can't get me out. Or when I was 4 years old, there was a young man in the apartment above, and he's standing on the steps, and I stood above him while they took my picture and peed right on his head. I know, horrible, just horrible stuff. How do you forgive yourself for this kind of stuff? Except that, I did have good aim, that's all. So the thing of it is, when you go back through your life, you're going to find countless opportunities to open up your arms and embrace that person that you are that you may not have thought very highly of. And embrace the other people involved as well. And take some days, because you're not going to do it quickly. It took me, I'm 70, so it took me over a week. I did about 10 years a day. It took me an hour or 2 each day. I didn't try and limit myself. I'm retired, so I got the world by the tail, and I took the time. And one of the things that happened was, I have an event going on in my life where I have, shockingly to me, because it hasn't happened to me, I can't even remember, 20 years, 50 years, of a person that I'm angry at, really angry at. And it sort of reaches out, grabs me by the throat and shakes me around a little, hauls me off into the bushes. And as I did this work, spontaneously, I found myself loving them. And I couldn't get to that place before when I just sat down and said, I know this person is a gift in my life. I know this person has a message for me. I want to find the message. I want to get the point, and I want to make the changes that I need to in my belief system and in my life. So it's a really, really powerful technique. Now, the other one that I want to talk about, the second technique, is Ho'oponopono. And I love it because of the incredible simplicity. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Now, the people that are a problem in your life, start doing Ho'oponopono. So, I'm very gifted at dreams. And I have dreams every night that point out my small deficiencies. They're hardly worth mentioning. Never mind. And then I have an agreement with my dreams that when it shows up, I'm going to make a change, and I'm going to make a change that day. And that way I create a feedback loop with my inner self, and it knows that I'm going to take what comes seriously. So I have a lot of guidance that way. I wasn't able to get it. So this person I'm upset with, as I'm driving here today, I decided 45 minutes, I'm going to do Ho'oponopono. And oh my God, I realized why I was so angry at him. After just 10 or 15 minutes, maybe it wasn't even that much, I realized that I was so angry at him because when I was younger, I had made a mistake in my life, and I could see that they were making that mistake. And the other person that they were involved with, they had sort of a sick viewpoint from this perspective. And I realized that I too, when I made my bad decision, had a viewpoint that was skewed, that was out of balance, that would justify me making a bad decision, which I did do. And so that immediately freed me because I knew I wasn't angry at them. I was angry at this part of myself that had betrayed me and my life. And I realized, even though I haven't done it yet, I'm going to do it, that that's the part of myself that I need to go back and love, go back and embrace, go back and let that part of myself know that it's an important part of me and that I understand. People always make decisions within themselves, not relative to other people, but within themselves for good intentions. So I may have to go back and discover what my good intention was, even though I was very unhappy with the results that I created. And with that, thank you very much, and I'll stay here and answer questions. Yes, Paul?
Could you repeat the three statements having to do with...
Ho'oponopono? Yeah, thank you. So it's 4. I love you. And I'm thinking about them. Now, Reba has an incredibly brilliant take on Ho'oponopono. And it's worth drafting into speaking and talking about how she's constructed her model of this. But this is my model, and it works for me. And by the way, you can make your own model, and I guarantee it'll work for you. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm saying I'm sorry to them. What I'm saying I'm sorry about is they're reflecting me back to me. So I'm sorry I gave you this really crappy role. You love me unconditionally. You've agreed to follow my script. And I gave you a terrible role. So bad that I hate it. Sometimes that translates in, I hate them. But of course, it's never them. I love you because they're so courageous. They have come into my reality and agreed to play this role and reflect me back to me. Oh my God, that's incredible. And 4, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for being the reflection that I need to grow in my life and be a better person, and be a better person in the world, and stand up for instance, the things that I believe.
You forgot them. Please forgive me.
3.
Oh, thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Isn't it funny I forgot the most important one? Please forgive me. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. That was a great question.
So Mary Lou asked you at the beginning, tell us about a little bit. I know it's Jane Roberts, but some people may not know Jane Roberts. What's the history of Seth and her?
Yeah. So, because the energy is so high and the veils are so low, there are literally a flood of people that are channeling now. And all channeling means is you're able to get in touch with an inner part of you. Now, I started with Seth in 72, but my mother had warmed me up in 1960 when she gave me an Edgar Cayce book called Many Mansions by Gina Sermonara that talked about reincarnation. And reincarnation of groups, because we come back as groups. Everybody you see, much less know, has been in your group, and you're learning about them and learning from them. So, Edgar, who channeled, was extremely religious. And he spoke in biblical terms when he channeled. So, he believed he was channeling God. He sounded biblical, so he sounded like God. It was easy to get into that, we got a direct connection to God here. But then in 1972, when I got to Seth, a lot of people think the ideas are deep or difficult to understand, but to me, compared to the biblical language that Edgar Cayce used, it seemed like blazing clarity. Now, I had to think about what I was hearing and seeing in order to grasp it and understand it. Now, Seth is a personality and essence composed of what we would say is roughly 1,000 of us. About 500 of whom have experienced Earth incarnations, and about 500 have experienced realities different than ours. And they're speaking from their perspective how they see, in minute detail, in 40 volumes, exactly how we create our reality, step by step. Now, truthfully, Edgar Casey, Seth, later on Abraham, now recently Cryon, I don't care what they say. I could care less what they say. But I want to see if it works. I want to use it in my life and I want to get results. And I've been able to do that. And it's pretty astounding results. I mean, results that literally shocked the heck out of me and made my life not just better, but much better, and dramatically enabled me to navigate difficult times, because it's really easy to make a judgment about another person. And this is the big problem. We don't realize that we're the creators. So when we make a judgment about that person, it's in cement. And the universe is going to give us an endless stream of confirmation of whatever that judgment is. And until we change the way we view that other person, we will never get another opportunity to see and experience it differently. So what all these things do, all these tools, whether it's Edgar Casey or Seth, Abraham or Cryon, what they all do is give you an opportunity to re-examine yourself. It's all a paradox. So you have to find a way to get to a bigger place and see it in a different way. So you see people that are suffering, and now we get to see the heroic nature of that suffering. I choose to suffer in this particular event because maybe one, they don't want to die old, they want to die young, so they're young and vital. Two, they want to make a statement with their lives. Three, they want that statement to be a purpose about values, something that they believe deeply will move this reality forward. So, what I do is when I use these materials, I'm using them almost always to look at myself and then see how I can make changes. And the nice thing about my dreams is that they're not just a series of pictures. They're feelings. Now, most of the time when we wake up, we don't wake up with the feeling unless the dream is bad, but you can wake up with good feelings too if you program yourself. But we wake up with a series of pictures. Now, you can get plenty out of your message from the pictures, but what's actually going on is in your dreams, you're setting up experiences that show you from a living, feeling perspective how to view the situation differently. So, as you go through your day, it'll just come to you. A feeling will come to you, an insight will come to you, a knowing will come to you. Oh my God, I bet that person is really having a hard time in that area of their life, and that's why they're acting that way. Or maybe they had childhood experiences that have trained them that I must act this way if I'm going to survive. So this is a survival tool for them. And once you get that insight and you can open up your arms and embrace them from the powerful place that they are, well then you change and you become the change that you want to see in the world. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I just want to raise awareness on one point. This is not a criticism, but I'm a science of the mind practitioner, and I know that every word has energy. And we we're all in a sea of consciousness. Between you and me, there's God energy, and we're all living in everything on earth. Every time we use the word judgment, which has been said about 12 times today, we have sent judgment across the world. It's very important not to use those words. Or in a song, if they're saying, I don't have fear, you have just sent the energy of fear across. So I won't sing a negative word if it's in a song. And it's important that we just raise our awareness, even when people say, notice the negative words that are used in a fun way like, you killed that song, or you slay me. Notice the words of violence that you're using in your expressions that have become very popular with a lot of the cultures. And it's like with the water bottles. We know every word has an energy, and the subconscious has no sense of humor. You can say, I don't have judgment. You have just sent judgment across the world.
Yeah.
You can't say something and then say, ha ha. The subconscious, we're all creating it every single minute, positively and negatively. We're totally responsible for our lives. And the other thing is, we're having to fight the media. They are sending hate, jealousy, violence at all times. And so we have to work extra hard not to use those same words of racism. You've just spread racism. If they're accusing somebody of it, they have just spread the energy. And the other point I wanted to make is, it's very low consciousness to be offended. If you know who you are, nothing offends you. That person's behavior, you can work for change. But it's become a badge of honor to become offended, which is extremely low consciousness. You have taken on that energy then and accepted it. Nothing can offend you. You can work for change. But if you're offended, you're not working at your high consciousness. It's as bad to give offense as to take offense. So know who you are, your love energy, and you don't accept. You don't become offended. It's become like I'm a good person because I'm so offended by all of this. No, you don't know who you are if you're offended. Work for change. Work for the positive and put your positive energy back into it. Those are just some of my comments. The words all have energy, which Mary Lou pointed out again and again this morning. It's so important that we don't say those words, or we become part of the problem instead of part of the solution.
Yeah.
Just to raise awareness, that's all. It's not a criticism,
Yeah.
but I'm just trying to give you, everything's quantum physics in Science of the Mind. Everything we do is quantum physics, and that's the power of prayer. Quantum physics. So we're all connected in the sea of love and God energy, and there's no such way as individualism. We're all
I want
connected.
to say too, you heard different people respond differently, like to the storm, and everybody's responding where they are.
Right.
I know because I was in those there. I used to pray to Jesus. I used to do those things. When it's an ism. I love what Reba says. It's just an ism. We all are in different places, but when we get offended by it, we're really empowering it more.
Exactly. That's
Yeah,
my
I
point.
see
That
too.
is my point.
I can
Yeah.
see that because we just gotta accept people where it is, like the song, let it be,
Yeah.
because people are all growing up. Yeah, I thought that too. I saw some things during the storm and I thought, we just have to let people be. There's no bad or good. And we're still, so many times our ego wants to build ourselves up that we're doing better than others, and that.
Right, exactly. That's my point. Thank you.
So, very beautifully said.
Yes.
That was very beautifully said.
Just to raise awareness,
Yeah.
not a
I really
criticism at all,
appreciate it,
by
yeah.
the way.
And very
you know
true.
that. You
And
know
it's
that.
very, very true.
Mhm.
So, thank you for that awareness and sharing that.
Miles,
Spot on.
Miles, can you say the, I was backtracking, can you say
Oh,
the 4 things
sure.
again?
I love you. I'm sorry.
Say, I love you.
I forgive you.
I
I
forgive
do,
you.
sorry. Please forgive me.
Please forgive me
Okay, I forgive
and thank you.
There's a really good book called Zero Limits that
By Joe Vitale.
that goes into the book and explains it. But,
Yeah, yes, Mark.
okay, so I was thinking as you were talking.
Speak nice and
I was
loud.
thinking as you were talking, obviously, that when we come into the reality and we all agree, and when you talked about World War, whichever, and how many people died, that also means that all those people had to agree to die in that war also for change.
Yeah.
And so the thought, I think it was in 1988, there was one of the single largest earthquakes in Europe ever happened, which was in Armenia. 50,000 people died in that event in about 2 minutes. And what was interesting is that the world went to Armenia, and at that time Armenia was under communist rule. And so here, the day before, everybody's the enemy. The day of the earthquake, then the next day, the world literally beat down the doors of communism to go and help, to rescue those people, because people from all over the world went. And it was only a couple of years after that the Berlin Wall came down. So that really set that into motion about shift and change, and how people agreed to give up their existence in that moment to allow that change to move forward and happen. That's kind of boggles my mind.
Oh, yeah. That's just a beautiful, beautiful example. And by the way, Diana, you should be up here speaking.
I know.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to get her up there.
No excuses.
I got a lot of words.
Yeah, what you had to say,
She has
totally
another
right.
gift too, but
Yes.
anyway.
Right? I give advice without being asked. That's my
Gives you a discount, free advice.
Karen?
I wanted to share
gift. My special treat.
I wanted to share a perspective on Ho'oponopono, if I may.
Please.
Okay. Ho'oponopono is from ancient Hawaiian culture. So what most people are familiar with in Ho'oponopono is what Mark referred to in the Zero Limits, and that was a work by Dr. Hulen. And his practice, based on his teacher, Morna Simeona, which was called self-identity Ho'oponopono, where they termed these four terms. And it's really important to know that when you're speaking those, that you're speaking to yourself. So when you're saying, I love you, when you're saying, I'm sorry, when you're saying, please forgive me, when you're saying, thank you, you're speaking to yourself, and the resonance of that resonates out to everyone. But what I wanted to say about in the ancient culture, because I lived there for a long time and studied in the Hawaiian culture, is that Ho'oponopono, the word pono means balance. So loosely translated, Ho'oponopono means to seek the balance. So when you're seeking your balance in your own self, that was the derivation coming through for the self-identity of Ho'oponopono.
So beautiful.
So I hope that helps
That is
everybody to
beautiful.
kind
I
of
never knew
connect to that.
Yeah.
Beautiful,
Because there's
Karen.
so many layers, and we have this modern culture of what we think Ho'oponopono is. But it's a very ancient way, and the Hawaiians go to the seashore if they can, or in the mountains, but they look at the sunset every night, and they do the Ho'oponopono blessing. So they're forgiving themselves daily, and they're loving themselves daily, and they're resonating that out to themselves and their culture, their tribe, their town they live in, however.
That's so beautiful.
If you
Yeah.
want to take that, it can be very difficult to understand, but it's a very simple practice. And the more simple you try to keep it, the more it's going to resonate for yourself and others.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And Karen, you should be up here.
Yeah. It's a true
Giving us a message on
And I might do it again someday. we'll see.
Ho'oponopono, yeah. And I would dearly love that.
Mahalo.
So, yeah, and I love Hulin because, and he's the lady that Mary Simeone,
Morna Simeona.
Morna
was
Simeone,
his teacher.
his teacher, he and his wife had a child that had a serious rash on the arm that would never go away. They went to countless specialists, and after he started this work, it healed.
She just asked a question to me, which you did not address when you talked about Jane Robertson, Seth. Who exactly is Seth?
Well, Seth is the personality essence that's comprised of these 500 individuals that have agreed to, that want to support this reality and share their understanding of how reality is created. Seth is very multidimensional. He is involved in many dimensions, and in all of them he's a teacher. And he comes through speakers. So, as Mary Lou is quite familiar, there were prophets in the Bible. People that channeled in the Bible were called prophets. And that's all he was somebody that came through trying to bring light and love into the world and help people understand their place so the world would make more sense.
But to your understanding, he never walked planet Earth, right?
He did.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, Seth had many lives,
Okay.
including one as a pope. Very short-lived. He was poisoned. But he had many lives in the earth, and about 500 of the persons that are involved in this personality essence had lives in the earth, and about 500 did not. They have lives in other dimensions where they can see and understand the energy that we're dealing with here.
And yet they speak with a unified voice?
Yes, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, they speak. But and my interpretation is some of those personalities come and go. In other words, it's not always the same 1,000 like sacrosanct or something like that. I think it aligns based on the topic. If there's a topic, then those entities that are breathtakingly powerful join in the conversation to share their insight and their love. Kev?
Yeah, he called himself a multidimensional being. And he talked about some of his lives throughout his books. And he used as an example, like one life he said he was what you would call, now what we used to call retarded, but he really mental. And he said that was one of his, emotionally, that was probably his richest life. So he showed that why we pick what we pick, kind of things. And then he also, oh shoot, I had the main thing I wanted to say. But he, what was it? He,
While you're thinking of that, he also, go ahead.
well, one other thing, in case you wanna, I have to hunt it up, but I have a video of him, channeling in his early days. If you wanna listen to a little bit of that sometime.
Sorry, why was his best life was being mentally challenged?
Well, because you don't have the intellect, you don't have the strong intellectual part, so there's less of that. So then you feel the emotions more, you're focused on the emotions more than the mental. Usually with us, we're all so much in our mental stuff that the emotions you feel, but the mental stuff is usually overpowers it a lot. Whereas with that, he was very much and felt the emotions, just like when you see some of the people in the, like Dr. Light and I visit a lot of assisted living places and things, and you see the people, and a lot of them, sometimes when you don't have so much intellect, you're happier than when you do. In fact, the channeled beings that we've talked to said, well, if we could just cut all your heads off, you'd all be instantly enlightened. Getting rid of that part.
I just wanted to bring it, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's Carolyn Mason's work. And
Oh, yeah.
either Sacred Contract or Sacred Contract, I think is the name of the book. And that's a really good one, and she puts it in pretty good layman terms, the way she writes, to understand what those commitments we made from a very sacred high place before we came down. So that might just be something to help people.
I wanted to say something too. I think Reba and Miles have touched on this, but if you have a friend or, a husband or wife or something, we don't see ourselves. And if we can remind each other, I always think of Carrie Ellison. If I say, well, that's really hard, she'll say, well, you want more of that? So is that what you're asking for? You're asking for more of that, Mary Lou?
To Diana's point, yeah.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
if we can remind each other when we say certain things, in a loving way, just so that we become, recognize how we're speaking and what we're bringing on ourselves. And I thought that's cute the way she says that, because she just looks at you and says, would you like more of that?
And Miles, when you mentioned Seth, you also mentioned Abraham. Were you talking about Abraham Hicks, Abraham that collective, or?
Sure. Well, I spent about 25 really intense years pursuing Abraham, also with incredibly wonderful results. Really made my life a joy, and been on some cruises and workshops. The Abraham message is very positive, and there's only about 10,000 YouTubes on Abraham online. So I speak at an Abraham group when I go out to Seattle, and they kid me because I've done so much Abraham. They say you don't even have to go to the group. You can just channel it. And at first I was kind of offended because I love Abraham so much. But at one point during the last cruise, I was sitting there, and the person next to me said, would you quit saying those words before them? I want to hear them say the words. I don't want to to hear you say the words. And when you're paying, $275, you want to hear it from them, right? I totally get it. But that was also when I realized that I had to make a change and get back, and I needed a bigger playing field. And so I got back to Seth, which I dearly loved, and took some Seth intensive study courses with Reba, and so that helped me a lot. But to this day, every day, I still read and study Abraham and love it. It's a huge, huge gift in my life. Any other? Oh, well, one last thing about one of Seth's lives. He had a life as a woman, and he had 12 children. She had 12 children, and she was very poor. And he said, like the life when he didn't have all of what we consider our mental capacities, that was an incredibly rich life, because when the sun came up in the morning and she could see her children were alive, because they didn't really have any food, they begged, it was a profound experience for her every day, and how rich that was. Not an experience I would choose, of course. Seems incredibly harrowing, but these experiences, think about. Oh, that's another talk. So, thank you all very much. It's really been a pleasure.